Welcome back to the Retail Media Breakfast Club. I'm your host, Kiri Masters. And last week I did something pretty fun with a couple of other podcasters in the retail media tech space, a show that I've been nerding out on called The Middlemen. And the hosts of that show, Scott Messer and Tom Limongello, and I did a live stream on LinkedIn, which we called Retail Media Tech Jam. And we dissected the backbone of retail media networks and why media buyers should care. We actually got a pretty great turnout of listeners on that live stream and some really great questions from the audience. So I'll link up to the full replay in the show notes. But I also figured on sharing a few snippets of that conversation right here on the podcast, just in case you don't have a spare 45 minutes to check the full thing out. And by the way, if you haven't discovered the middlemen yet, you're missing out. Tom and Scott are career ad tech experts who've turned their big brains to retail media. And what I truly love about their show is how they bring in current retail media leaders and really weave together war stories and history lessons from the trenches with hard-won lessons from advertising's past. But for today's conversation, what I've pulled out from that session is something that's been driving me absolutely crazy. Why retailers are so secretive about their tech stacks and whether that secrecy is actually sabotaging their own growth. I brought in some fresh poll data that I ran of 67 brand side media buyers who are begging for transparency. And Tom and Scott were able to help connect the dots to show us why we've actually seen this movie before. All right, let's jump in. So I call it the retail media doom loop. And so it goes like this. So Amazon and Walmart command the lion's share of retail media today. Quibble over the percentages, but everyone more or less agrees with that. Okay, so retailers get bought into the big vision of retail media. It's super profitable. It's the thing to do. Everyone's talking about it. So they stand up a business and a team.
Yep.
And then to Jordan's question here, actually, a lot of the initial retail media revenue is kind of, maybe not deliberately, but it is siphoned off from trade media and shopper marketing into retail media. So initially,
incremental, yeah.
There's a big like, growth spurt initially. They see some quick wins, then growth slows because the trade dollars run out. And then the retailer doesn't want to invest in new technology or hire the experienced salespeople or the ad tech people because the growth is slowing, and then it kind of rolls to a stop. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's, initially everybody's been aping Amazon from the sponsored search introduction in like 2014 to 18, saying, oh, we can increase ROAS, but you can't increase ROAS forever. If you start with a situation where you have products in a search grid that show up initially when there's no sponsored placements, there is a real opportunity to create high initial ROAS. But then over time, if it becomes a competitive market, then everybody's spending, and then you sort of go back to where you were at the beginning. But if you look at offsite and other channels in store, if you're digitizing it, there are places where ads may not have been before, where you can really bring in real incremental opportunities for awareness or mid-level awareness. And I think that's where, if they're scaling this demand from the initial onsite to offsite, that could really work. And that's sort of where we started, right, Kiri? Because you said, it's always onsite first and then offsite. I think a lot of the smaller retailers started with minimal traffic onsite, started offsite, and realized this early on. But they were probably doing it with like a turnkey ad server, vendor, where they didn't do that business transformation in-house, and maybe they're stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to put a point on Jordan's question before we move on, this demand question on the retailer's side is, there's the growth has slowed. The rate of growth has slowed, right? So is there enough juice for the 248 other retail media networks to continue to scale?
I think I saw Jordan's question a little bit differently, and I think it's for Jordan, it's are buyers putting enough pressure, are brands putting enough pressure on retailers to require an upskilling of talent and demonstrating performance, sort of saying that, a lot of the money just came from strong arming you into spending in the retail media network if you wanted to continue having your products in store. And like they haven't had enough demanded of them yet. And that's really interesting. And I think that's sort of the question here is like, what's the buyer's POV of the tech under the hood? And it's not just the tech, it's also the people and the culture and the process that sort of gets into it. Because you don't know what you're buying always when you get into these retail media networks. You just know you're handing over a chunk of money to somebody to do some marketing for you.
When your time, budget, and team are already maxed out, keeping up with retailer platforms and media requirements can feel like a never-ending labyrinth. That's why even the best brands bring in an execution partner. Acosta Group makes retail media execution simpler. They stay ahead of every platform update, tech shift, and media spec, so your campaigns actually show up and perform without draining your team. Let Acosta Group handle the chaos behind the scenes so you can keep building the brand. Check out acosta.group and tell them Retail Media Breakfast Club sent you. That's ACOSTA.group. Well, actually, I read a survey a couple of weeks ago. 67 respondents. I did say brand side buyers only.
That's a lot for a brand.
I had to weed out all the ad tech people that jumped in and voted. So anyway, this is all brands. I checked every single person, and this kind of drives me crazy because I do talk with a lot of tech providers out there who are not allowed to talk about who is using their technology, and to me, it seems a little counterintuitive. Like if you're a retailer and you're investing in technology and you're stewarding your brand's media dollars, I would want to be out there talking about investments that I'm making in ad serving and relevancy and reporting. So I don't understand it. And I was curious, do media buyers feel the same way? Do they feel like if they knew a little bit more about what was going on in terms of the pipes, would that influence their decisions?
Yeah, I mean, we had a good episode with Eleanor Hayden from Hayden Consultancy, and she gave us a lot of the sort of differences that she saw between retail media networks in the on-site world. So it was, Target and Walmart gave real, granularity in terms of the types of placements and carousels that you could buy. And so that was interesting for me to see, like that's something that a real brand buyer wanted. Whereas I think a lot of the smoke and mirrors around, is all going to be about clean rooms or whatever. And most of the brands that I've talked to have said, AMC is really good. You got a 5-year look back from Amazon. And most of these brands aren't really leveraging it to the way that they should be or could be. So right. That's probably not it. But I think we should talk about, this is sort of where the buyer's checklist would come through, which is like, what are the things that a tech provider could do that would make it a different proposition? I mean, and my initial thought is that, some of the areas where, if we are in this sort of doom loop that everybody is sort of maybe invested in onsite and doesn't know where to go to next, really where the challenge would be is, does the ad tech provider have a sort of unified platform to be able to move budget in a more agile way away from non-performing channels? Because I think one of the challenges with retail media networks is that because they may not have either the top talent or tech, they are looking at things in a very rigid way where they're, you're booking mobile, you're booking digital out of home or whatever, and they're kind of like stuck. These budgets are not fluid. And that's probably going to remove some of the performance possibilities you could have. So if I were on the brand side, or if I were a media buyer who had, access to, these budgets, that's what I would want to be able to do.
So it's a good little rabbit hole for us to dive into. But I think when you look in like the broader context of our conversation, what is the buyer's POV on tech, right? And there's so many different ways to get into this. And, across our entire conversation here, I've been thinking about the parallels to regular media and how does this affect brands, retailers, and across the top, which is what our conversation is today. And I don't know, one thing I want to posit to you is like what people say in a poll is very different from what they actually do during the day. And as a media seller, I've learned this because, you hear a lot of we want transparency, we want fraud free, we want all of that. And then they go, yeah, but can you just go spend my money and tell me what I got as a ROAS?
Well, we're going to leave it there for today. Hope you enjoyed this little segment from the Retail Media Tech Jam live stream event. Tomorrow, we're going to play a little bit more of this conversation And I'll link up to the full replay of the live stream in the show notes as well.